Hey, this is Russ from Studio One Expert, and I'm joined by Paul Drew.
Hello.
And we have some really exciting news, which is the release of Studio One 4.5. And we thought we'd do what we normally do and say everything you need to know about Studio One 4.5. And me and Paul are going to talk you over the differences, and we've got them side by side here on the screen. And then we'll talk you through each bit. There's 70 features, and we probably won't cover all 70 because we want to keep this brief. But we also want to be as comprehensive as we can in a brief video, which sounds like an oxymoron. So we'll try our best. Anyway, Paul, you've had it for what, 24 hours, Paul?
Yeah, about 24 hours. Yeah, loving it.
Great.
One of my favourite features. I think you can just see on the. You can see the difference between the waveform display. It looks amazing.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that in a while. Yeah. But first we'll do it in the list that they gave us.
Oh,
of this.
sorry.
So which is fine. So the first thing we want to talk about is the redesigned input channel mixer section. What we mean by that is that some of you might not know, but on Studio One you have this input section where you can have all your inputs from your audio interface, and you can stretch it out and see it like that. And the interesting thing is, the first thing you'll notice at the top of the screen now, if you can see this here, we now have gain controls on the inputs, which can go either way. And we also have, let's be careful what we say here, polarity flips or phase flips, depending on which way you want to say that. Which means, and on a stereo channel, you get two of those. So you can see that there on the console. Because that's the next thing we want to say. It's also sent across. It's also on the mixing section of the console as well now. So we'll talk about that in a section in a moment, but we want to talk first about this redesigned input channel. So because this is the old version on our left and the new version on our right, we'll show you straight away. And the first thing they've done is that if you open the console setup now, that's what you used to see. What you see now is far more. You've got channel components that you can turn on and off, which is quite useful. So you can turn these things on and off, input controls, you see them there. And you could turn the sends and cues off, and you could turn the I/O connections off, the VCA connection. So you can basically collapse it or grow it and see as much as you need to see as you go, which is, I think, really useful, Paul.
Yes, excellent. That's a really handy thing, yeah.
Especially when you're in kind of tracking mode. What they're trying to do here is they're trying to give you a kind of two sets of console. You've got the input console, and then you have the mixing section. So when you're tracking, this is really powerful now in a number of ways. And I don't know if you've seen this, Paul, yet when you've been playing it. If we go to the I/O setup now, there's my Apogee ensemble, and at the moment I've got two inputs. And first thing I can do is I can color code the inputs.
I didn't see that. That's
brilliant. On input. Second thing you can do, which you couldn't do on the old version, is you can add multiple inputs at the same time. Let's say we were going to track, let's say, 4 of Paul's guitars, which we often do because Paul's such a great guitar player that we'd probably put 4. We can say channel count here 4, and then we say channel color, and let's go for a yellow or something, and then we press OK, and it's assigned 4 more inputs and named them automatically. Apply, and then when we come to the input section now, there we are, and you can see my mic coming on there, number 4. And if I want to, I can then turn the gain down on the input or turn it up as well. One point to make, this doesn't deal with anybody doing bad gain staging in their preamp in the first place. That is unless you have a compatible preamp, which is probably going to be just the PreSonus preamps, and there'll be a list, I'm sure, appearing in the coming days. But I don't know about you, Paul, but I think all of this is really handy.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely brilliant. So the inputs, if you've got a PreSonus interface, are those inputs now, the gain, does that affect the input gain on the preamp of the interface?
Can remote control then a PreSonus 192 and a Quantum or the Studio Live series of mixers.
Wow.
The other thing as well, of course, is that anything that happens here is printed. That's very nice, but what makes it even better is when you come to the mix section of the console, if we close that for a second and we fully maximize this window, we may as well, because we'll go back to comparisons in a while. If you max up this window now, and we come to, let's say, this audio, often in the past, if this audio was too hot or too quiet, you'd have to then edit it here. This is like a lead vox, and you put it, that was the traditional way we'd do it, wouldn't we? Or we'd put a preamp, or we'd put something at the top of the channel to deal with it. Now, you can increase or decrease the gain of a recorded track without using any plugin. So it's doing it on the mix section as well, and phase flips on the mix section as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I actually used that yesterday because, and as you said, I've only had it for 24 hours, but I got a track yesterday and the vocalist actually recorded very hot.
Yep.
And it was too hot for the compressor. So yes, I just used that and ducked it down a bit, and it
exactly.
worked,
and that's really the point of it. The great thing is you can now drive plugins hot, or you can pull back on a plugin. So if you want to slam a compressor, you don't increase the gain on the audio here on the timeline. You can actually do it here, which is much better, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've got what we call permanent gain and phase controls on every mixer. I think I need to add in at this point, Paul, what's going to be very clear as we show a lot of stuff is they are gunning for the Pro Tools user again with this release. They're going for people working in tracking studios, mixing studios, which moves me to my next exciting feature for those of you that are... let's just flip this back out again so we've got some side by side. It's quite a nice feature of a Mac, actually, that you can do that.
Yeah.
Is that the next feature, if we open up these windows and we open up that window, is you now see a new icon here. It looks like a three pins from a pinball thing. We now have real groups. And when I say real groups, in the past what you could do is you could group by doing the folder thing, or you could... I don't know about you, and I loved it. It's a feature I do love about Studio. Well, rather than making a group, sometimes I just grab some channels like this and just quickly do quick fader movements. Do you know what I mean? It's like what I call an ad hoc group. But for those who wanted real groups, as they call them, you've now got them, and they're comprehensive. So if I right mouse click on a group, you can see you can choose it to just do the editing side of a group, the volume side, the pan side, the mutes and solos, the record monitors, inserts and send. So that group can be allocated to just do certain parts of those channels. Really
Which
cool.
is just like Pro Tools.
Just like Pro Tools.
Yeah.
You've got Dissolve Group as well, just like Pro Tools as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
What's even cooler as well in this is you can have groups within groups. So, for example, if you've got, I don't know, track 2 guitars, 2 bass guitars with a mic and a DI, or if you've got... Actually, a better example is in a drum situation. Sometimes you'll group a drum kit, but then you might want to group the top and bottom snare or the in and out of the kick. So they might have 3 mics on a kick, or you might have a sub on a kick and stuff.
Yeah.
So you can have the top and the bottom of the snare mics as a group within the drum group, and they're independent of each other. But so you can nest your groups, which is really quite cool. So
yeah, that's very handy. Very handy.
It's not a new feature in Studio One 4.5, but you can now do quick suspend as well. You hold the Alt key when moving a group fader and pan control, and even though it's a group, just like Pro Tools. So if there's a group here and there's group 10 there. And if you look at that group, if we move stuff, they all move together. But if I hold the Alt key, I can just move one fader very quickly on its own. So you can suspend a group on the spot.
Do you know what? Every day's a school day. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the same in Pro Tools. Yeah, I think
that's brilliant.
Yeah,
okay, great.
You hold the Alt key to do this. So you have customizable channels in the console as well, which is what we talked about earlier, which is here, where if this is getting a bit too messy, turn the VCA connections off. You can turn the I/O connections off. Turn the input controls off to send to the Q mixes. So you turn as much as you want on or off. So, which is cool. Which is great.
Yeah.
So if you don't need
really
things...
Really good.
Great. Right, 2 more things that are going to make people very, very happy. The first one is, we come down to metering now. Right mouse click, and we have two new options. We have RMS metering, and we have pre-fader metering.
At last.
Happy days. Right click in the level meter, and you can turn on pre-fader metering.
Excellent.
So you can also do I/O routing for multiple channels now, which means you can select a pile of channels very quickly and then just assign them in ascending order for the I/O routing, which is quite nice. Again, that's an old Pro Tools feature. We're going to say Pro Tools a lot in this video because there's a lot of features that have been inspired, shall we say, by Pro Tools, but for Pro Tools users using it. Now, another really nice feature, which is actually aimed at Logic users, because they were the people that complained about this, is in the past, when you did sidechaining, you would right mouse click, and you would, let's take this compressor here, let's open that, and you would come to do sidechaining in it here, and now you can go either way with sidechaining. So you can send a sidechain from a sidechain channel, or you can set up a sidechain. It's what they call the reverse sidechain routing. So for a lot of people who are logic users, they weren't used to the idea of creating a sidechain send and then allocating it. In this, you can just choose it here.
That's brilliant. Yeah,
which is much better. So that's apparently a feature that came from logic users who are used to that. Because again, in the Pro Tools world, you'd always do a kind of send, wouldn't you, Paul, and then find that send in a plugin. But reverse.
Funny enough, I think I just did a video about sidechaining or using sidechaining. So yes, that's going to make things much quicker.
And the next nice feature as well is if you've got a plugin with a sidechain allocation on it, if you copy that plugin to another channel, it takes the sidechain routing with it.
Brilliant.
Nice. So again, if you've got let's say 3 bass parts that are all been triggered by a kick sidechain, you can copy all the routings across without stuff. Now the next thing you'll notice here on the left hand side on this GUI, which is 4. Whatever it is we got to, I can't remember at this point. You'll see that this is slightly changed. It says update plugins and reset blacklist. That's gone now because we have a new, fully functional plugin manager.
Oh, great!
Which is wonderful. And you can choose things by vendor, by type. You can filter stuff. You can turn them on and off in here. You can reset your blacklist. It's all there. It's really quite good. You can update your plugins in there. So I think that's a much better way of dealing with plugin management. And as you can see, when you've got a plugin collection like mine, which goes on for some days.
Look at that lot.
Yeah. I didn't buy all of these, my ad. So that's really, and you can spot things really quickly. So I've got a rewire version of Waves rewire, and then I've got another rewire here from somebody else there, a Soundly rewire, and sometimes those can conflict with each other. So very quickly, I think this should work. Don't do things live. Yes,
awesome.
I can find those too. I can think, where's that rewire corruption coming from? Very quickly find it, and stuff like that. Or for example, I don't know about you, Paul, but sometimes I think, why have I got both audio units and VST3s and VST2s and duplicates of stuff like that? So you could remove the duplicates of plugins that you use.
Yes, all the time. Yeah, that'll be very handy.
What about you though? One word of caution. Sometimes I've done that to try and make my list a bit shorter, and realise that sometimes I've used an AU version of the same plugin or a VST, and then when you open a song, it's missing plugins. So
yes.
Have caution. Right, the next feature is there's now a mono option for export mixdown. You can now do a mono mixdown, which is really cool.
Can I ask why we would, only from my point of view, I've never done that. So what sort of situation would come up where you'd need to do that?
When you want a mono mix.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but
I suppose radio play. I don't know. And actually, to be frank, we did some tests because the new generation of speakers, which are growing rapidly, Sonos, Apple ones,
that is true.
They're not mono compatible. It drives you crazy. You can lose a vocal if you don't mix it right. Because we did some tests. And you can, if you get your phasing stuff, where you start doing phasey stuff in like stereo width in mixes on guitars and synths and stuff, they can just disappear and collapse on a Sonos speaker.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And you might have somebody who just wants a mono version of a plugin. So, a mono version of a mix. Sorry.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah.
Right. There's masses of new stuff in MIDI. Let's just open MIDI for a second here. And if you come to MIDI now, there's loads of new actions which are really quite cool. Things like...
Well, the colours as well. That's the first thing. Look at that. And instantly. That's great.
That's changed a little. But strangely enough, you've also got these other things as well, like you can apply a scale to a set of notes, which is quite good. You can distribute notes. There's tons of new stuff. So there's lots of MIDI power now. You can do repeat notes to part end, which is quite nice. You can mirror notes on chords and stuff. And sometimes you know that they have that thing called the retrogrades and inversions. So as a note ascends, another note descends below it.
Yeah.
So you can do all those kind of tricks and stuff. And I had a play. There's one called Fill with Notes. You'll see here. Sounds like a guy that you know, Fill with Notes. There it is, Fill with Notes. And that's where you can say in a certain key for 2 bars, just put random notes across that key in. And so you can create really cool arpeggios very quickly.
Okay.
And stuff like that. So it's kind of, there's lots of stuff in the actions menu, which is really quite good. So there's lots of other great new features in MIDI, which I'm going to have to skip over because they're quite complex. There's independent quantized grids. There's major minor triads, scale options now in the music editor. The stretch notes by dragging. You can stretch the notes in the MIDI editor now just by dragging them, which is quite nice. There's chord audition. So the chord selector now offers an audition mode where you can audition the chords as you're trying them out, which is quite nice. So macros have been improved. For those who love their macros, you can now do much more customization here at the top. You can create your own custom buttons. You can do things like you can create a combination of options and make them as a single macro item. So it's a much more powerful macro toolbar, which is where, in fact, we'll make a separate video just to cover that because it's pretty deep. Now, the next one that's going to really help people as well and really impress them is the CPU performance with virtual instruments apparently has been significantly improved. So, for example, if you use multi-instruments, it's about a 70% lower compared to the last version of Studio One.
Wow.
If you use Contact, it's apparently 50% better. And all the third-party stuff. So they've improved CPU performance greatly.
Even from third party?
Even from third party. They say it's their number one feature request in the answers at PreSonus.com. And that's what they've done. They have greatly improved performance on virtual instruments.
Sorry, can I just say on that? Every time I've used Studio One compared to other DAWs, and I do use other DAWs, but Studio One always has better performance than, especially Logic.
Oh, I agree.
And Pro Tools as well. So it was already better than that.
It was already good. It was already good. Yeah. But now, as I say, if we apparently MiTi is multi-core optimized. So I think some of it's to do with the multi-core optimization on some stuff. But as I say, Presence XT has got a vastly improved load balancing over the multiple cores. So they've worked hard on the multi-core threading stuff, I'm guessing, to get that better. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So Paul, this is another massive feature request. And let's zoom in on a waveform in version 4, all the way in. And that was what you used to see when you zoomed in, which was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Horrid.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
this is what you see now in 4.5. You get real waveform smoothing. And so if we go along a bit here, I'm just trying to find a bit where we've got some audio showing. Yeah, showing it in silence isn't the best option, is it? Yeah. So let's come here.
There you go.
There we go. Let's go to the middle of there. Let's zoom in on that one. All the way in. We've got proper waveform zoom in now. Smoothed waveforms, which are a usable selectable feature in. If you want to optimize your machine, then you can turn this on and off. So that's a setting in the preferences. But now we have proper waveforms smoothed. And I know that's been a feature that so many, I know Pro Tools users in particular, were always saying when you edit audio, it was always a bit grim doing it like that. So as I say now, the difference between that and that's as close as we could get in the old version. So that's so much better.
Yeah, so much better. Better.
So that's good. We now have Snap to Zero crossing option, which is nice. I know some people were bothered about that when they were doing things like tabbing through transients and stuff. So that gives you, in an audio editor, that gives you, for some people, a greater resolution of accuracy when they're doing, as I say, tabbing to transients and cutting the audio in the editor. So Snap to Zero crossings in there now. So there's that. The next one, as I love, as I say, is if you're sending your mix to somebody else, or even if you're just an idiot and you're not very good at moving your mouse along, you've got two new options now. If you go right mouse click here now, if you go into the events, you can lock them. So you can toggle the time lock. So with time lock, if you move it, it comes springing back.
Great.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Secondly, you've also got, in the event, you can toggle the edit lock. If I mark that now and just do a click on it, I can't edit it. I can't do anything with it.
Okay, great.
So basically, it makes it, you protect your edit lock. So if I did it now, did a click, that's editable again. So it's just a security feature, which I think is nice.
Yeah.
You can lock tracks as well. So a whole track instead of an event. So you can come up to a track and you can come in here, there, and lock the track. And you can't do anything now.
What, so you can't move the fader as well? Is that...
I think the fader still works. So it's not a console thing; it's an editing thing.
Okay, understood.
Yeah,
great.
The storing of presets. We're going to kind of skip over some of this stuff. The storing of presets within the folder now. So when you save an FX preset in the chain, the dialog has a folder selection with a list now. So if you come in here, I don't know if you ever did preset storing. Let's find something that's got a plugin on it here. So let's say this was a preset and you wanted to store the preset. You've got that in the older version. You got that. So it's a slightly different dialog window, and you've got a folder selection here now. See the drop down.
Cool. Yeah, I see.
Because in the past you had to kind of either make a folder. There's a drop down window now, which is quite cool.
Great.
Which is cool. I think that's useful. Additionally, you could record markers with the shortcut, and there's also one-step audio loop export now. So you can just grab an audio event as an audio loop and and drag and drop it from the arrangement to the browser, and it converts it all into an audio loop very quickly. Brilliant. Especially if you're making sort of your own loops and stuff like that. And you can also, one thing I wanted to show you in the IO setup as well, which is nice, we can drag and drop these around, just move them around like that.
Nice, great.
Which is nice. The other cool thing as well, of course, now, is you can import and export IO setups. So if I've got an IO setup and I want to export it, I can send that out and it's saved as an IO configuration, which I can then, you can use it as a backup amongst other things, but it means that you can either go to another studio with your interface and just load it on the machine and you've got the IO setup instantly.
I can't tell you how handy that is.
Yeah, it's really cool, especially if you're using multiple studios and multiple interfaces.
Yeah.
Because you often have to start setting things up yourself, which takes time. So there's that in there as well. Now I know this because I was part of a guy that was having conversations with PreSonus about this. For composers particularly, you can now export video. Happy days.
Awesome. Yeah.
Using all the video codecs on the OS that you have. So if you're doing composing work to video, you can now export your new piece of music, your new edits with the video intact, and export them and send them over to the studio or whoever's or the producer of the film or whatever they're signing off. That's a really important feature, and I know composers are going to be big thumbs up. Export of video.
That's awesome. Yeah.
There's now variable bitrate support for MP3, so not just fixed bitrate, but variable bitrate, which some people prefer. And then there's also AAC support as well now, M4A, which is very popular amongst Apple. That includes AAC and ALAC, which is the Apple lossless format, which is like FLAC, but the Apple version of FLAC. Import and export is featured on that. So AAC support is pretty cool. So, for example, stuff on iTunes is often AAC, I think.
Yes.
And so just dragging it straight into the timeline. Happy days. Really good.
Brilliant.
So that's it, really. But 70 new features. So as we wrap up, Paul, any highlights for you after the stuff we've just gone over?
Well, the waveform is definitely a big highlight. I always thought it looked, and it is a visual thing for me. It is a visual thing, but sometimes when you open Pro Tools compared to Studio One, you did look at the waveform and you go, "Oh, do you know what? It does look better."
Yeah.
And now, now Studio One's got that.
Yeah.
I think that to me, it's a little thing, but that's a big thing for me.
It is the little things often that make people happy, isn't it? But as I say, looking at that and not seeing all that spiky weirdness. And you can actually turn it on and off. If you as I say, if you go into the preferences here, you can come in and you can just go, and you'll see the difference. We turn it off again, and apply it. There it is.
Ah, man, it's just night and day, isn't it?
It is night and day. That just looked a bit cringy before. That's proper, isn't it?
That looks great. That looks great. Yeah, I love that. That's and also this is a point upgrade. It's not even like
it's free.
Yeah. I mean, they pull it out the bag every time, don't they?
Well, mentioning no names, it always worries me when some certain doors come out and the bug fix list is longer than the feature list.
Yeah.
And of course, bugs have been fixed as well in this version, but this is, as I say, this is adding real value to a proposition. So if you paid for version 4, you're now getting 70 new features they never promised to you, but they're giving you. And it's a real winner, as I say. For me, some of the winners are, as I say, if I've got a piece of audio in the timeline and it's a bit hot, doing just this now is so much better.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's great. And it works in groups as well. So we grab a part, let's say you've got all these BVs and they're all hot. We can just grab all of those and just pull them all in. And actually it's working because it's in a group anyway. So it's picking up the group assignment, which is cool. Yeah. And phase and polarity switching, whichever vernacular you want to use for that. I say on stereo tracks as well. If you just got one that's cranky, you just turn it on and off like that. So I love that. I love the new I/O stuff. I think, as I say, being able to just do a group of things and say, okay, I've got really track some drums now, so I'm going to go drums here, and I'm going to make them all blue, something, and they're all mono. Boom. Oh, I did one. So if I go back in, I think, oh, okay, I need 7 more drum parts, and it's drums, and that's good. And I'll go, yeah, that's still that colour. We'll make it those colours, and then they go. That's brilliant. It's smart enough as well. If you see drums, it's then gone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to follow the rest on, which is great. And
can I say about that as well? Because I was over at some of the watchers might know James Ivey. I was over at James Ivey's house.
Oh, your rat backpack, or whatever you're calling yourselves.
Yeah. Studio rats. So yeah, I was over at James's house, and we did 3 different songs.
Yeah.
And I had to set up the I/O because James has got a desk and quite complicated routing.
Yeah.
And it took 25 minutes each time I did it. So that's now going to be like bang, 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 and it's done.
Well, even better, what you can do is to say, or you could go to the I/O and let's say this is if I took the ensemble from scratch and I just removed everything, and I go yes, and I go, I know I've got 32 channels on my ensemble. You could 34 actually. I go add. And I go, just call it input for now. And I go 34 here, boom. I go, okay. It's just assign them all. And very quickly I can come in and say that's going to be a red channel, a yellow channel. So much quicker. And then naming stuff in here, it's just so much better
Brilliant
for me. And as I say, that's cool. So I love that. There's just so many great features. And the grouping, of course. For those who are users of other DAWs who've always kind of struggled with the grouping thing. That's really cool. Be able to start setting up groups and have complex groups. And I do love that we can go editing and volume, because I was always like that when I was using Pro Tools with the grouping. I was thinking, well, I want to do an edit group, but I don't want to mess around with the mix groups.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So things like that are really cool. So I think in terms of what they've given us, I think it's a big thumbs up from us, Paul, isn't it?
Without doubt, yeah.
Especially
Always
for the
pulling out
cost.
the bag.
For the price, 4.5 for 4 owners is a no-brainer.
Yeah, without doubt, yeah.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.
Cheers, guys.